Hey there, Tracy. Just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I know we haven't met before, but I'm looking forward to this conversation on Copilot. My name is Sree Sundaram. So I've been at THG. We founded this a couple of years ago, but before that, we were all at Microsoft for quite a bit of a time, so we're quite familiar with the Microsoft base of technology. Let me give you a kind of a high-level introduction of where I am. I'm primarily a technologist at heart. Grew up coding, grew up with the bits and bytes. I'm a closet coder in many ways, right? Still like to dangle with the bits and the bytes. However, my day job is really more about technology strategy and business strategy, and more importantly, about how all of this technology plays into the business value of things. When you do things, you have to have a business value to it. Otherwise, you just don't do it. Otherwise, it's merely a hobby, as I say. So I'm looking forward to this conversation about Copilot and how it impacts our lives and how it has been impacting our lives for the last couple of years. So over to you, Tracy.
Yeah, sure, sure. Well, great to meet you for the first time. Let me give you a little bit about my background. So, I have been with KiZAN Technology for probably 6 years now. I'm a practice lead over the collaboration team, and where we focus purely on all things collaboration, whether it's Teams implementation, um, SharePoint, any mergers and acquisitions. A big part of what we do, obviously, is Copilot, which is why we're here. But my background stems from starting out as a programmer, moving into development as a manager. Most recently, before Kaizen, I was a VP of engineering, a CIO equivalent for a major online retailer. I won't say the name, but it was a fun shirt company, and it was great. So I've been in the executive suite, I've been in the individual contributor, and obviously now as a manager and pushing out Copilot. It is so fantastic. I'm so excited every single time I get the opportunity to do a implementation or to work with my team, just to see how it's transforming the way organizations work. It's just a fantastic thing. So I'm glad to be here and talk to you about it today.
Yeah, and likewise too, Tracy. The last couple of years has been in many ways quite insightful. Trying to figure out new
Hmm.
ways of using this technology. Not because I'm enthralled by it. Not just because I'm enthralled by it, because I'm still am enthralled by it, but because it has made life so much easier, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
For example, right from the personal to the professional.
Mhm.
As part of THG, yeah, we write proposals, we write SOWs, we research out new legal agreements when we talk with partners and all of that. So this Copilot has been, a very, very intelligent intern, if you will,
Mhm.
right? And that's how we use it. That's how I use it from a professional. That's from a personal perspective. you know uh, I do all kinds of research that typically takes me a long time to do it. Now I
Yeah,
just go in there and put in the necessary prompts, and so in many ways it's made life much easier, um,
yeah,
both
yeah.
professionally and personally.
Well, I tell you what, I always, when I'm talking to clients, I always say to them, personally, I would pay for it myself. That is how much it has changed my work and made not only myself more efficient, but my team members more efficient. I can remember back when uh, I was in the middle of trying to complete a specific project for a client, and our boss called and said, "Hey, I need you to create this presentation." And I didn't have time to do both, and I'm thinking, "Oh, how am I going to do this?" And then obviously the first thing that pops into mind is, well, I'm going to co-pilot this. I'm going to use Copilot and generate this information. The value of it, I certainly feel like people don't realize how efficient or how it can bring to the table a better part of them, make them better at who they are. It's not, a lot of people are like, oh, AI, it's going to replace me. It's not replacing you, but it is certainly making who you are today so much better. And I can't speak enough about, some of the things that have allowed our team and our organization to certainly be much more successful and shine brighter just because of Copilot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do totally, Tracy. Now, speaking of teams, Tracy, does your team openly admit that they have used Copilot to doing something?
You
I
know,
before you answer that, Tracy, I tell my team, go use Copilot,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I don't want you to be spending time doing stuff that you could easily offload it to an intern.
yeah,
And this is Copilot as an example. I want value added stuff from you, right?
sure, sure,
So,
sure,
but I've seen that my team members sometimes are like, oh, they're still reticent, they're still hesitant about saying, oh no, I did this initial work through Copilot, right? I said, go for it, you should. How about
right,
your
right.
team?
You know, it's interesting. My team is, I guess, a little different. Everyone expects that you're automatically using Copilot. That's the expectation. But what we find is people will always be like, "Did you Copilot that? Did you use Copilot for that?" Because it's more of we know that we need to use it. We know that we're going to use it. And so now people are just getting better of doing their job. So you're not sure whether or not they're using it or not. So those questions do come up. But, it's never looked at as negative ever. It's always looked at you've gotten further, you've been more efficient, your penmanship is much greater than it used to be, you're more professional. I mean, those are some of the key indicators. It's certainly something that comes up, but not ever in a negative way. It's just the expectation now. It's like going and getting a glass of water or meeting at the water fountain as we used to when we were all in the same place. It's expected. You're going to have that time where you're doing it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. However, I must caution this, at least from my experience, Tracy, is I can easily spot the stench of an AI generated
Sure. Yeah.
information, right?
Yeah.
So I tell my team, look, you're using this to accelerate your thinking,
Mhm.
not replace your thinking,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So as long as you're aware that you're accelerating your thinking, because instead of doing research all over the place with Bing and all kinds of search engines, and then coming to a point of view, you're using Copilot to get to that point of view faster.
Sure, sure.
But the responsibility of the ultimate document, the deliverable, is still yours. That doesn't
Yeah,
change, right?
absolutely.
So that is one thing I found out. That is especially some or less experienced folks would just dump it all and say, "Hey, you asked me to use Copilot, and here I am." Right? I
Right,
said,
right.
no, I asked you to accelerate your thinking using
Hmm.
Copilot. I didn't ask you to replace yourself.
Sure, sure. I
Right?
think, for from my perspective, we're pretty good at making the transition from what Copilot is giving us to, making it our own. It's just a starting point. We're making it our own. I especially use Copilot for asking myself questions about whether what I'm thinking resonates, or am I putting it in, I follow what's called the pyramid principle. Am I putting my thoughts and my communication in a pyramid where people are going to understand what I'm trying to say? It's a fantastic tool to go back and validate even your information. And then one other thing that I often do is I'll use like word dictate, and I'll just communicate, just start talking, and then use Copilot to clean up what I'm saying, because I have all these thoughts running in my head, and I want to make sure that Copilot can put it in a cohesive fashion that is going to resonate with the individuals that are taking the information from me. That's where, and what's interesting, and I don't know if you experience this, how do you go about, when you're talking with your team or talking with potential customers, how do you go about helping them understand the behavioral change around the adoption for Copilot? Any thoughts there?
So one thing is, from a team member perspective, it's helping them accelerate the thinking. You say
Mhm,
there's no shame in using these kinds of tools, because these
mhm.
kinds of tools are meant to be used that way, right? From a customer's perspective, it's not just about that, Tracy. It's also about uh, how true is that information.
Sure,
As
sure.
we all know, there's a bunch of hallucination going on, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not just with Copilot, but with the other tools too.
Mhm,
And it's the nature of the beast, right? It's the nature of the
mhm.
algorithm, and there's certainly an amount of hallucination that's to be expected. But how do you deal with it, right?
Right.
How do you cross-examine Copilot or any other tool to make sure that you got the right answer, right?
Sure. Sure.
One of the things that we ask our customers to do is, okay, don't just use Copilot. Use an alternative tool if necessary
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
cross-examine that and find out what what's what's what works, what is more accurate, and what is not.
Sure.
The
Sure.
other thing we do is you know, for example, we ask for source. Oh, can you tell me the source? So Copilot tells you the source of where it got the information from,
Mhm.
right? And then we cross-check a few things and say, take the source and go back straight to the source on the website.
Right.
And
Sure.
say, does
Sure.
it have that, right?
Yeah.
So to just to avoid these hallucinations, right? Because because at the end of the day, your reputation is on the line, right? Because you recommended this course of action to the company or to your customer or to your stakeholder, and then so therefore you got to give these the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
Sure.
The
Sure.
good is the acceleration. The bad is sometimes it makes things up, right?
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if you heard of one of these stories where the lawyers, like this was a law,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so one of our customers is a law firm, right? And so they ask me these questions exactly. I
Hmm.
said, well, how do you deal with this? I said,
Yeah.
the way you
Yeah.
deal with this is you got to cross-check. Just like you would cross-examine a witness, you
Yeah.
have to cross-examine, Copilot or any other tool for that matter.
Yeah.
Right? And
Sure.
eventually that way. I don't know if you have noticed it, but I've seen these tools, not just Copilot, but other tools as well. If you cross-examine a couple of times, they say, "Oh, sorry, I messed up. I meant to say this."
Right. Yes. Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I've definitely noticed that not only with Copilot, but with the other tool as well. What's interesting though, we have a quite a few law firms that are our clients as well. And the law firms are particularly interested in it, when they're looking at contract reviews and trying to understand, where are potential opportunities for Copilot to identify if there's a negative in the contract specifically focused on them. That has been a major ask for several of the law firms. Not only that, but also a lot of research. Some of the other firms that um, have been very interested in Copilot for us is engineering firms, which and we work with a particular client, great client that builds bridges. And so taking Copilot to evaluate schematics and evaluate, pressure points for a bridge. I mean, there are opportunities there. We've been able to kind of demonstrate to them how they can take advantage of Copilot in that area as well. But to your point, you are absolutely right. You got to be careful what it's given you. You got to go back and verify that. You as a human, you can't just take this and run off and say it's perfect. It's not going to be.
Yeah.
Um, there have been several times that I have used Copilot and I've said, I don't know if I believe you. Can you go back and verify it again? And sure enough, it'll come back with something different. So
Yeah.
certainly have the same experience as you there.
And speaking of speaking back to these tools, Tracy, I don't know what your experience with prompt engineering is. I speak to these tools. Um, I call them tools, is because you know just like I would speak with a human,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I'm very nuanced and necessarily not necessarily flowery, but the way I would speak to a human, right? It's not a what is the word? It's not a terse Unix
Hmm.
prompt, right? Like
Right, right.
file this, file that. No, not. It's more
Hmm.
of a verbose kind of a thing, right?
Yeah,
And I found out, at least in my experience, the more verbose you are, the more nuanced you are,
hmm,
the better the result, right?
yeah,
Because
definitely.
it does get to some of these nuances that you
Mhm.
might want from the answer. So
Definitely, definitely. We've been doing a lot of promptathons, and I always give the example of, imagine like I have my son when he was little. I would say, Dax, I need you to go take a shower, and while you're in the shower, I need you to use soap, and I need you to wash your hair. And oh, when you get out of the shower, don't drip water all over the floor. And so, and just like in that situation, you might have to prompt again. You might have to do it multiple times. So if you drip water all over the floor, Dax, I'm going to go need you to go get a mop and I'm going to need you to clean that up. So just that human part of communication is hugely important. I think a lot of people have trepidation about that, really. I think that sometimes they get a little stuck in the rigidity of being professional all the time, that they forget that if they just go into it and just have a conversation, they are going to get so much better outcomes, so much better results. And if they continue to just have that conversation, it's going to improve and get better for them. It would be nice if that was clear, but some people's personalities come into play and it impacts their prompting capability. You know what I mean?
I totally understand what you're trying to say, and this is a good time for us to plug our a book that we wrote. One of the chapters in the book, Tracy, is about prompt engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Google did it pretty well. I know we are speaking about Copilot, but
Mm-hmm.
they have something called as a PART, P-A-R-T
Mm-hmm.
framework that they use for prompt engineering. And that seems to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the STAR methodology, right? Situation, task,
Mm-hmm.
action, result.
Yeah,
The
sure.
similar aspect of PART
Mm-hmm.
that tells you exactly all the things that need to have in every prompt
Sure.
for you to get the right result.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we in fact, for us, this entire technology has been quite beneficial for us too. The book that we wrote helps us to get more business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now all of a sudden our customers are asking us to, hey, go implement. We want to implement Gen AI in our company. How do I go do that, right?
Sure. Sure.
So we give them various strategies based on. At the end of the day, you and I know, right? It's a new tool,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's all it is. Tools come and tools come and tools go. The adoption, the management, and the implementation of all this is no different than AIML, which was 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure.
Or
Yeah.
or big data 20 years ago.
Right. Right.
It,
Right.
it, it's how you embrace the tool and use it to its most effective. So
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You know what's interesting, and let me ask you a question, because we spend a lot of time when we're doing implementations focused primarily on the prompt engineering side. But I've been doing a lot of reading here, and the behavioral components of getting people to change their ideas around AI has really kind of it's been introduced in a lot of discussions that I've had. It's certainly been a topic for discussion in a lot of blog posts. I'm curious, what's your thoughts around getting people to change their behavior towards actually utilizing Gen AI? We know it's all there. Everyone knows it's there, but a part of the adoption is getting that behavior change. I'm interested in your thoughts there.
the first thing was, Tracy, that we had to tell our stakeholders there's no shame in using this tool, right? That was the number one. People were closet users in the sense that they would use it, but they would not admit to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in interviews. And there were a couple of things where you could clearly see somebody. We were interviewing some candidates some months
Mm-hmm.
ago, and you could see that candidates were looking to the left on the side.
Mm-hmm.
They were reading straight from.
Sure.
So there's nothing wrong in using technologies to accelerate your thinking. I go back to that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what we've been telling our stakeholders today. Go forth and use it, right? But don't think of it as as gospel, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure.
You have to vet it, you have to cross-examine it, and then so that has been the single most challenge. And the second part is there's so many tools out there. Which one do you use,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing
Yeah.
is, do I pay for it or use the free version, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
then I would say start out with a free version, and then as you improve in your thinking, as you improve in your usage, right? Then go, and then you might find that the ROI, it goes back to the business value. If you think you save more than $20 a month by
Yeah.
using the tool, there is your answer, right?
Right. That's great. Yeah, I'm going to use that because that is definitely, whenever we are talking Copilot or when we're, looking to a client to invest, that's always the question, am I going to get the value from this? Obviously, if you have Copilot, you can see there's tremendous value. If you have some of the other tools, you can see that there's tremendous value. But when you're talking about those green dollars, when people are at this day and age, they're looking to save as much as possible. you've got to be able to very clearly state where you're going to get that savings. I love that, if you're going to save $20, it pays for itself, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
great.
mean, if you look at the most, especially in the US markets, Tracy, if you look at most people's professional salaries, right?
Mhm.
Let's say an average knowledge worker, desk worker, right? Let's say conservatively they make 80 grand, right?
Mhm.
Right? Which is about
Sure.
$40 an hour, right?
Yeah, sure.
So if you're able to save in a month's time, right? In a month's time, the 160 hours that you work, most people actually work 200, let's say
Mhm.
160 hours, right?
Yeah,
1 hour is $40, right? So this saves you, half an hour of your time.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
And if you look at it that way, because most people start getting into this license is going to cost me this much in the organization, right? And that is a big number, there's no doubt. But if you break it out to, okay, Tracy as an employee is going to save half an hour of her life, which is going to improve, even if you were not to do anything with that and have a better lunch, right? That's going to improve the quality of her work-life balance,
Right.
and she's going to
Yeah,
be more focused in the afternoon, right?
yeah, yeah,
If she takes a 1.5 hour lunch versus a 1 hour lunch, she's going to be more focused in the afternoon. I mean, it has to be that way too.
yeah.
And so that is going back to your question or option, Tracy. These are the kinds of mechanisms that we've been using, mostly through adoption, through business value, to say, look, as a company, you do stand to gain a lot in terms of
Mhm.
business value. An analogous example would be, a lot of these companies, especially in the tech companies, about 20 years ago, they started providing free lunch, right? Free food for the entire for the
Sure.
employee the whole day, right? Employees were enabled by it. Oh, they said, oh, this
Mhm.
is great! I get free food. But what they didn't realize was the company was probably getting 10 times more. Uh, you know,
Mhm.
these people would work at their desk. They'll go get
Yeah,
some food, work at their desk. Now that 1 hour of loss of productivity of going out for lunch, because nobody goes out for a 1 hour lunch, it almost always takes 1.5 hours.
right. Sure.
Sometimes
Yeah,
get in
yeah.
the car and can get back into the car, right?
Mhm.
So 1.5 hour times, the same $40, right?
Mhm.
40 times 2 is $60. So you don't, for $60 a person, right? The company gives you, I don't know what do they give you? Pasta, maybe,
Yeah, pasta, a little salad,
maybe
something like that.
and all that, right? $60. And the company makes $60 off of you in return for giving you a $15 lunch.
Right. Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
the same way you got to think here too.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean those are solid points. It's interesting though because I've got another question for you because when we're talking to clients, one of the things that is always asked, okay, I'm saving that hour. I'm saving across the board maybe 30 hours, maybe a head count. This comes up a lot. Does that mean that I get to reduce headcount? Does this mean because I want customers, they're often saying, I want to use that savings. I want to gain that savings. They're not necessarily interested in the soft part of it. I'm interested in the soft part of it. We should all be interested in the soft part of it, but they want to recoup that. What do you say to a customer like that? What do you communicate to them?
So a couple of years ago, if you think about the Microsoft technologies,
Mhm.
when they started, adding more metrics into the workforce productivity suite, right? Um, it was very hard to meet productivity.
Mhm.
Now, with Viva,
Viva, yeah, yeah.
the kinds of technologies there, I can easily find out
Mhm.
without any obtrusive means. I can easily find out that Tracy has been spending, with or without Tracy's permission. I can say Tracy's spending, you know, six hours, a week on meetings, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And Sree has been spending 10 hours a week on meetings,
Mhm.
and that itself is a number right there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If by using these technologies, Tracy has been able to come from 6 hours to 5 hours in the following weeks, right? And which means that you're able to, that itself is a measure of productivity, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Now the question is, inevitably, especially CFOs will come back to, does that reduce my cost of, the
Mhm.
cost of operations, right? Cost
Yeah.
of goods sold.
Exactly. Yeah.
The question is, yes, cost of goods sold, but how about the quality of the goods that you produce,
Right. Sure.
right?
Sure.
Quality clearly improves because Tracy is now more focused.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right.
The reduction in rework, right? the number of times you had to rework a deliverable, whether it's a SOW or a manufacturing widget, right? The fact that you had to reduce the rework has to be taken into account. So why I'm saying that, Tracey, is because now CFOs are much more open to those kinds of metrics because the metrics are available.
Sure,
So
sure.
20 years ago, when I made this case, with large corporations like Citibank and others, they would just poo-poo me and say, "Oh, those are all soft benefits. We don't measure soft benefits in this company.
Right,
We are all
right,
about hard benefits," right?
right.
Now, actually, with those metrics, those indeed become hard benefits because I can see that you spend 10 hours a week on meetings. Now you're starting to spend 9. That 1 hour, how have you improved? Now you're producing deliverables on time,
Sure.
right? The deliverables with less errors. So all of those things have to be taken into account. And I must admit, not all CFOs are there yet, right? But quite a number of them are in that boat where
Sure.
they're starting to measure productivity this way, right?
Yeah. My experience, very similar. My experience is very similar. The CFOs are looking for those hard numbers, but I think I particularly love the Viva Suite. Love the Viva Suite. Love Viva Insights. Love Viva Engage. Being able to go in there and take a look at how long I've been in meetings. Being able to understand how many chats I've had. Love that capability, which early on in the Copilot, that wasn't there. It has
Mhm.
improved so much, and it's helped to deliver the appropriate message to the CFOs now. So we do have those capabilities. And, the way that I handle it is I try to help them understand, look, we've got all this data here. We also have the ability to directly survey and talk to your people and get feedback from them. The sentiment surveys that are a part of Viva Insights are fantastic to provide those details. And then also from our implementation standpoint, being able to follow up at the end of the implementation and being able to see how adoption was at a very low point and it's tracked upward, and to have that visual has been very helpful when showing it to the CFO and the C-suite. They get engaged. And then one more thing I'll say is, from an adoption perspective, my experience is if you get that C-suite engaged early, you get the executives to buy in, you get the executives to understand how it's going to help their assistants and help them. It's a shoe-in, and it's much easier for them to accept. You get that buy-in, and they're all on board, and you can get the soft and the more factual numbers. It doesn't matter because they want it, and they want it today. They don't want to give it up, just like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, speaking of executives buying there, Tracey, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've seen some different tiers of citizenship in the
Hmm.
corporate citizenship.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those who have Copilot, those who don't, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the executives would get it, right? And
Hmm.
then the directs would get it, and then the people who are actually doing the work don't get it, right?
Right. Right.
So it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the one who's doing all this work, but you're the one
Right.
having this too, simply because it's $20 a month,
Yeah.
and the company says, no, I cannot afford this for
Hmm.
everybody in the company, only for a select few, right?
Sure. Sure.
And those select few, now are privileged.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
has changed, right? And how
Yeah.
is that going to change? Either companies, going back to business value, especially for you, Tracey, when you start to implement, show the better business value, is to
Hmm.
say why it's important for everyone to have it, not just a select few, not just a privileged few. That's one.
Yeah.
The second part is companies like Microsoft and others seem to need to think about volume licensing that brings the
Hmm.
cost down, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would say. At least I've seen those that the privileged status of having Copilot or not
Hmm.
needs to go away.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to an interesting question. We have our C-suite, we have our knowledge workers, and we have our frontline workers. Where do you think that generative AI or AI in general, how do you think it can impact the frontline workers? I'm the clerks, people in the manufacturing space. What's your thoughts there?
I think it impacts everyone equally well. Tracy, right? Sure, most of the use cases that we talk about, most of the use cases that consulting companies usually bring about are in cases in knowledge engineering and
Mm-hmm.
desktop workers and things of that nature. But there's certainly tons and tons of use cases
Mm-hmm.
on the front line too.
Mm-hmm.
For one of our customers, we did standard operating procedures. So this company,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, they had this tribal knowledge in the heads, right? And they didn't want to, they were so busy throughout the year, they just did not have enough person power to have downtime to say, I need to extract the information out of your head and put it into an SOP.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
what did we do? We helped them, create an initial SOP through Gen AI.
Mm-hmm.
They got that, initial document. They were able to edit the document and
Mm-hmm.
then use that as standard operating procedure.
Sure.
That was one use case that we started right away. The second one was in terms of patterns, right? When we think about manufacturing areas where, especially, when you have different product lines,
Mm-hmm.
right? Moving from one product to another product line means that you have to change your assembly line, the configuration of assembly line. That
Mm-hmm.
is a downtime, right? And how do you want to, clearly manufacturing companies want to reduce the downtime and increase productivity by engaging in patterns and having AI create that initial schedule, product
Mm-hmm.
development schedule, helps them to minimize downtime, right? So now from changing a die of size 20 to size 10 takes me a downtime of 20 minutes, right? Now by better aligning that during lunch
Sure.
breaks, making sure the orders are created in the proper way, then you reduce the downtime from two a day to perhaps 1.5 a day, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are some of the experience that I know where we have directly engaged in, but I'm sure there's
Mm-hmm.
tons and tons of areas, especially if you think about the possibility of Gen AI when mixed with mixed reality,
Oh my gosh.
right?
Yeah.
Remember,
Right.
Microsoft's, the glass and all
Yeah.
that. There was this virtual reality, there was
Mhm.
mixed reality, and
Yeah.
so take that and combine that with Gen AI, right? The possibilities are enormous,
Oh, yeah.
especially in, in frontline workers where you are in a dangerous situation somewhere, on top of a machine somewhere, things like
Sure.
that. You don't want to go have people go in there. So there's many opportunities for AI to get in. However, I would caution this though. Um, there's still a lot of that stereotyping.
Mm-hmm.
Not just from a domain knowledge perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
that hallucination in domain knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
but there's hallucination also in social aspects too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that stereotyping needs to go,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I would say if there was any caution on how we would use Gen AI or any of these tools, it would be to um, make sure that negative stereotypes,
Mm-hmm.
one way or the
Mm-hmm.
other, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
professional, personal,
Sure.
social, or
Mm-hmm.
economical, those stereotypes should not be, uh, you know, promoted, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be one thing I say where we still have some work to do.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that because very often we'll talk to clients and we always try to have a discussion about responsible AI, have a discussion about critical thinking around the feedback that comes back to make sure that it's eliminating any biases that, from the output. And sometimes organizations have a lot of trepidation about having those discussions and we still drive forward, but it's really interesting because, a lot of individuals, a number of individuals believe that that may not necessarily exist within the AI world, within Gen AI. I certainly believe it does.
Yep.
But it's having that conversation, making sure to apply the responsible AI conversation just as much as you would have a discussion around securing your AI and not oversharing. They're all on the same level. I think it's important to have um, anytime you're having a discussion about any type of implementation. I have the discussion with my family about it because obviously personally everyone's utilizing it, so you've got to be careful, you've got to be aware, you got to know, and you got to stay up to date with what's going on, from the changes in the AI community as well. I really recommend people definitely stay up the breast on, what's going on, what changes are being made, in Copilot, what's being made in ChatGPT, all of those. Be aware of those. It's hugely important. It keeps you in the right space for your usage.
Yeah, that's indeed well said, Tracy. And also, if I might go, you spoke about your son earlier, right?
Yeah.
Young, impressionable minds, right?
Yeah.
For them, you got to make sure they're the right kinds of guardrails. You want to have them flourish with their creativity, with their innovation and their
Yeah.
imagination, but you don't want them to get hurt, right?
Sure. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
this case, it's not physically hurt, but mentally hurt, which is worse,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. There's
So
some stuff out there that can certainly do it. Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, so that
Yeah.
is one thing where I would say I'm not yet ready to. I'm a technologist at heart,
Mhm.
but I'm not yet ready to unleash a young mind completely
Mhm.
unfettered
Mhm.
into this world of Gen AI
Mhm.
without the right guardrails and governance
Sure.
around, right?
Sure. Right. Yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you. And I've got one more question for you, because we haven't talked about this, and this is huge. Agents, Copilot agents, any kind of agents. What's your thoughts? Obviously, big deal. Everybody wants them. Where do you see the I guess, where do you see the most benefit or the highest level of usage from an agent perspective?
Oh, drudge work there, Tracy, right? There's so much of drudge work that goes on in
Hmm.
corporations
Hmm.
where people can use the time to do value added work, right?
Hmm.
And the thing is, the clear thing is, you got to remove the fear from these people, from the
Hmm.
people who actually doing that work. So look, oh, if an agentic AI were to come in, they'll take over my job and have nothing else to do. No, you have something more important to do, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that is the kind of message that CEOs and the C-level C-suite needs to
Hmm.
impart to their employees. So look, this is not about replacing you. This is about making your life better, both
Sure.
professionally and personally, right?
Yeah. Right.
So agentic AI clearly is in wherever we see drudge work, repeated work and things like that. We talk about agentic AI as a completely new thing. If you think about it, if RPA,
Hmm.
right?
RPA. Yeah. Yeah.
Agentic AI is nothing but RPA infused with Gen
Hmm.
AI,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or
Right.
AI for the matter, right? Or
Right. Right.
generative AI, right? So we have attempted RPA with lots of success over the
Hmm.
years, right?
Hmm.
And even before that, industrial automation.
Hmm. Hmm.
The difference
Yeah.
is now we are being more smart about it, and we're using
Sure.
data to infuse it with AI, Gen AI, and things of that nature.
Hmm.
So I think it's here to stay. I think it'll find a lot more uses. Once it gets past this buzzword hype cycle stage, right? If you look
Right.
at
Yeah.
the hype cycle, everybody talks about agentic AI, right?
Hmm.
Whether
Hmm.
they know whether they mean it or not,
Right.
but
Right.
in reality, it'll stay because all of these tools that we use.
Hmm.
Uh, if you think about even the productivity tools,
Hmm.
Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint, they are using agents inside of the tools
Yes.
that makes your work better, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Which is sometimes annoying, by the way.
Hmm.
I'm trying to write something up and Copilot pops up and say, "Can I help you?"
Right. Sure.
so,
Sure.
so
Yeah.
it's all there. It's all these tools that we use. At Holistics, we use a tool called Valuefy where we develop business cases,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Business value things. So even there, we're planning to use agentic AI to improve the next generation of there. So I think it's going to pervade everywhere, Tracy, in many software. So
Hmm.
it's always going to be implicit in maybe in 5 years down the road, nobody's going to talk about it because
Hmm.
all software, all systems have some
Yeah.
sort of agentic AI built into it.
I would certainly agree with you, and I think that that's why there has to be some type of focus on governance
Yeah,
within the organization, because if particularly from a co-pilot perspective, if you open it up to everyone, you've got an agent here, an agent there, and being able to put your hands around the governance and even the data connections becomes important. It's an area that I know certainly for KiZAN that it's high on our list of discussions that we're having with clients, but making sure if you're taking advantage of it, you have a solid governance strategy. It may not be implemented yet, but have something in mind, how to control the spread of the number of agents that are being created. And you would do that, whether it's agents or any type of application delivery, that you're just be mindful of it.
Yeah. The clear part is IP theft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most companies are like, okay, now they put all this stuff, and agents are kind of getting in there and giving me all this fantastic stuff. What if my competitors get to know about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where we need to assuage the stakeholders, that with the right kinds of governance models, making sure the information doesn't get out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's contained. You can be as effective with these guardrails without having to worry about intellectual property loss and theft.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what else you got?
I think we spoke a lot there, Tracey, and I enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did too, right?
I did as well. Hopefully we get to talk to each other again. It was
I'm
it was
sure we will.
actually
I'm sure.
I had some trepidations to begin with, but you're a nice guy, so
Likewise, Tracey. Yeah.